Let's jump back to your previous idea there of the psychic ability of the mind and just define it another way. And a lot of the issues that people may have with the concept from a quasi-religious viewpoint disappear. There's this brilliant philosopher by the name of Daniel Dennett, an American. Actually, a rarity is to have an American brilliant philosopher, but in any event, he's our contemporary. He's alive now. And he's got an excellent book called Consciousness, and just fascinating mind experiments within it. You got to really sit down and want to read it because it's many hundreds of pages long, and there are very few pictures. But in any event, he defines psychic ability of the mind in a very concrete way as the ability of the mind to detect complex patterns in the seemingly random action of chaos.
That's interesting.
So if we think about the mind as, we already know, for instance, that the mind has that it wants to create patterns wherever it goes, thus the ability to hallucinate, look and see clouds as various things. And if we extend that to an ability where all of a sudden your mind says, okay, I've got it, here's the answer, and you've been just sort of mulling around on the problem, and there might be, say, 99 variables in it, you never really sat down and thought about it, maybe some part of the pattern was suddenly detected.
In a subconscious level, even.
Correct. Or at maybe even a superconscious level, in the sense that all the neurons fired, but you didn't actually have to apply the consciousness to it, but you gave each and every aspect of the problem sufficient energy, if you will, such that it all came together, very much like a neural net, which is actually sort of quasi-patterned after the human mind. Wow. Now, a guy got a patent here fairly recently for taking another jump with the neural net, which is a kind of software program where instead of writing a very complex program, you write a bunch of individual little tiny cells, if you will, and just tell them to replicate and have at the program in a general sense. This guy came up with an interesting wrinkle on it, which was he made a neural net that watched another neural net perform and then started tweaking its behavior.
What?
Exactly.
Wait a minute. Is that artificial intelligence?
No, but it goes a long way towards the creation of the ability to do fuzzy logic within a deterministic environment. I mean, I would dispute that you'd ever, within the kind of computers we have now, be able to achieve artificial intelligence, simply because every aspect of the computer is deterministic. Therefore, if it is deterministic, it cannot behave outside of, that is to say, learn new behavior. Any new behavior you want a program to learn must already be pre-programmed into that program. Okay, all right. Okay, Prolog is a real good language, for instance. That's one of the languages we use extensively in our work here because it's very natively goes to the idea of words and concepts and context. And even Prolog, which you can tell the Prolog program, if XYZ occurs, stop yourself for a second, add this new chunk of code, recompile yourself, and restart yourself and pick up right here with the new chunk of code and this entirely new behavior. So in that sense, it's quasi-able to learn. But in order for it to put in that new chunk of code, it's got to be lying somewhere. I must have written it beforehand. Wow. Does that make sense?
Well, as I said before, the scary part is, Cliff, that every time we talk, I'm beginning to understand you at least quicker than I did when we first started, and maybe that's what's scaring me.
It may be a disease. We may have to watch that.
Yeah, right.
But in the programming world, there's various different levels of hierarchy within the coding world, and I've noticed that there seems to be analogs within almost every kind of profession we care to examine within humankind. It's just that within programming, it's very clearly set out. At the very top, well, at the middle to grunt level are all the people that just simply write code and rewrite and maintain. But at the very top are the people that get beyond the actual labeling of a job, and they get into things that are like design patterns, or they become debugging experts, or maybe even called software architects. Right. And these people sit around and they deal in just pattern recognition. And now that we recognize that the human mind is capable of such pattern recognition, we can actually do things such as your training that you were alluding to in order to beef up the ability of that mind to exploit that. Wow. And in fact, there's even people that have gone to that, and what they're doing is they're calling it, I think, opportunity scouting or something along those lines, and it's a whole new science of how do you recognize when you have an opportunity in front of you. But in any event, we digress.
But that's very interesting too. Maybe we can get back to that in a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Go on, because I didn't mean to interrupt you, but man, there's so much happening today in the field of, and Clif, you're proving that there is a link, and I mean a real link, between man's subconscious mind and our advanced technology with computers.
And I grant you that, and we can tap into a lot of this. Of course, there are a lot of people that are doing things the other way, where they're trying to use it to assist individual humans, as opposed to doing it on the aggregate. It's probably because I'm not particularly a friendly fellow that I'm dealing with humans in the aggregate as opposed to individuals.
Wow. Okay.
But in any event, getting back to our idea there, basically what we do is we sweep for emotional tones and flavors, looking really for change, not so much is an emotional tone persisting, but what's the new thing that's happening here. And we do it through scanning for all kinds of languages, and at the moment, many different alphabets, which has really given us a big boost up, because we're looking at people writing in their native language. Now, true, I don't speak Romanian, but we've had native linguists for Romanian apply the emotional quotients given a particular formula that I've got, and I tweak it as I go through if I can observe any kind of an effect.
Mm-hmm.
Again, sort of makes sense?
Yeah.
We basically read all these millions and millions and millions of conversations without caring who is saying what to whom. Yeah. And then we analyze just what is being said and the context in which it's being said, and we look for a divergence between what we would consider to be the norm. So if we suddenly saw recipes for blood sausage showing up in a gardening forum, well, that's a big change, and that's going to tell us something. We really wouldn't see the word blood sausage. What we would see is an emotional blip, because the word blood has more emotional energy than most of the words that you're going to find within the gardening forum, but you might find it in the reference to blood meal, in which case it's muted as an emotional level, but if you saw it in conjunction with blood pudding or blood sausage in that particular forum, it kind of sticks out.
Wow. It's still, what you have done, my friend, is still so incredible to me. You really have opened up a brand new level, a much higher level of human consciousness, and bringing it into a very real and applicable science.
Well, now let's not attribute this to me. I mean, obviously ideas go flying around, and I just happened to grab this one a few years back, but I know for an absolute fact I'm not alone in pursuing this kind of an endeavor.
Really?
Yeah, we've actually, it used to be way back when the internet was very young, there was this file called robot.txt that you'd find on servers.
Yeah.
And it would tell you whether or not the server allowed you to sweep certain aspects of it. In other words, it would actually give you the rules for working on that server. A lot of the machines, because of the nature of humans, were never protected with robot.txt files, and so they were really kind of open, and you could get at them, and if you weren't malicious, and you could write spider code that would jump from machine to machine to machine and do reading on it. In the process one time of doing one of these big, huge data sweeps, and we're talking about getting 60, 80 million conversations, if you will, of about 2,000 to 3,000 words, or maximally 2,000 to 3,000 words per conversation. Yeah. We came across somebody else's source code that had been stuck on one of these servers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what they were doing was they had a C program that had a Perl overlay that had the ability to transfer itself to various different kinds of C. It was written in various different compilers. And so, for instance, on a SCO box, it ran under a SCO C. And it had a version of the code that had been compiled for that. And it could quite literally copy itself from server to server to server. It wasn't so much a worm, because such activity was quite legal at the time. We're talking way back in the beginning days of the Internet. But at the same time, it made it vulnerable, because we actually were able to capture some of its source code. And its programmers they were familiar with the English language, because, of course, it was using actually a lot of the Microsoft products. And it was pretty good C code.
Now, because half the stuff you just said, I'm not sure I have heard those words, but a C code, I don't understand that. And are you saying
ABC, there's a programming language called C. And from it came a programming language called C++. And from that came the idea of object-oriented programming and Visual Basic and et al.
My gosh.
So it's an old, it used to be called the portable assembler. C was this very sparse, arcane, absolutely wildly open programming language with no restraint on it that used to be called portable assembler because it ran on almost all the machines out there. So a real old programming language where, for instance, to write a Windows program, you could do it in, let's say,